Hello, 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 hello. All right, hope you can all hear me. Um, Welcome back. Next up, we have Erin, who has submitted an update to her image. Um, and so I assume this was the original, and this is the new one. And I can see that you've added a sunlight as the key, and that's given the characters, the figures, a lot more definition um, and shape in their faces and their figures. And let's see, we have the interior lit up. And your comment was that you were struggling with getting contact shadows going, uh, foot contacts, and the contact of the stool legs onto the floor. I would recommend an ambient occlusion pass, or at Blue Sky we used, I think we used the term sucker pass. Was that right, Jasmine? Anyway, um, try an ambient occlusion pass, and what it'll do is it'll give you some nice. Let's see, we can do a burn. That's a blur. Sorry, where is that? Burn tool. Okay. So it'll give you some nice contact shadows around where the foot is and the stool. The other thing you could do, um, I think, would be just as effective, um, is if you flag off the light. You see that the light's kind of coming from um, here, and it's going through, this window frame. It's passing through, and then it's probably, I'm guessing there's global illumination or secondary light bounces coming off the wall, and it's hitting the guy and her, and also here. Um, what you could do is flag off the light. So use a piece of geometry that's solid and black, and try and shape and influence where the light gets to go once it hits the inside of the room. By flagging, this is what I mean. So um, it's basically just like a black shape that you put in the space. And what it'll do is it'll block off um, secondary bounces of light, or direct light, obviously, if you wanted to, if you wanted to put like something here, and depending on how solid it is, it'll basically just darken this area down here. And in doing so, it might actually give that contact shadow a little bit of room to breathe, and you can actually read it. Um, but try both. Try doing an ambient occlusion pass, um, and it'll give you more contact detail, or just flag it off. Flag off the light, because there's obviously you've got a lot of light coming through the window, and not all of it is desirable. And your task as a lighter is to shape that light and tell it how it should define the environment and the figures inside it. Um, the other thing I could suggest is if you added, like an area light here on the outside, and um, get get like hotter hits on these figures here because I know it is kind of late in the day, so the sun's probably not very intense, but um, just to etch out a little bit more edge detail there, and it doesn't have to be very bright, and you'd want to give it like a warmish color like this, but it will give you that extra um, sort of edge detail there. And I was looking at your references. That's you can see tonally, it's fitting the reference really well. In terms of the figures here, I feel like if you study the reference image, you'll see that the key to fill ratio, the key areas where it's lit by the sun, it's quite bright compared to the areas in shadow. So if you wanted to match that reference, I think my best bet is to actually just introduce some flags, flag off that wall. Obviously the shape won't be seen in the render, but what it'll do is it'll cut the light from bouncing. It'll prevent it from bouncing onto his face, and then what would happen um, is that his fill side will start to go darker, and her fill side too. And that'll give you more contrast. So the idea is, in lighting, it's kind of good to get um, a little bit of contrast where you want to focus your attention to, and usually you want to focus the attention to the eyes of the subject, like this guy here and her. And also, in terms of composition, I don't know if you have any leeway to do so, but if you wanted to, and if you use this crop in Photoshop, it'll give you it will give you your thirds. And there's a rule in composition which I'm sure you've learned called the rule of thirds, where you kind of compose an image and frame it so that where these points are, um, you kind of place your important elements in the shot. So in this case, if I were to use the rule of thirds, I would probably do that and try to get that his eyeball or his face in that point there in the thirds. Um, so if I try it again, you find that oh gosh, sorry about that. You find that immediately your eye kind of wants to go to his face and her face a lot more, and then you sort of give importance to um, his expression, the expression on his face, and you start to notice that things like him having his hand on the coffee cup, and then you get to sort of read her expression. Your eye naturally wants to go to where their faces are because of the composition. So I would try that as well. See how you go. All right. And next we have XVArts. I see you've done another of these lighting challenge images. Um, I like the colors that you have. They're, obviously you're trying to match this reference image. One thing I would suggest in terms of if you wanted to go further and to match the lighting conditions or the lighting setup on this reference image is to perhaps move that background element. I don't know what it looks like, a mountain or a volcanic island or something. I would move that over to that side. And then I feel like there's some sort of light source coming from behind that. I really love that on the reference image, this sort of uh, sunset, sort of hazy sunset light. I'd really like you to try and maybe move this element over and then try some sort of light source there and have it reflected. It's this sort of um, purple, sort of magenta type color. Um, and I'd really like to see like a brighter light source there, and you can see where the light's coming from, um, and have it reflected in the ocean here. And I would try, I know you're trying for this sort of witch, sort of mystical look, and that's great. But why don't you have a go at first pulling some of these qualities of this image in, like this kind of color in the reflection in the water. You'll get it naturally by having a light source there close to the horizon, and then you know illuminating the ocean. You'll get that reflection, and then you'll get that really nice golden bounce onto the subjects. Um, and then this this ocean will go, it'll be more sort of purple and magenta rather than green. I know that you placed um, some sort of light source here that is defining or illuminating the subjects here, and that's fine. But you know, it's visually it's not really motivated. Um, you could argue that it is coming from underneath there. It's some sort of mystical, um, magical light source. But again, if it was coming from underneath, then you'd probably getting these areas illuminated brightest, and then their faces would probably be less bright as as the light falls off naturally. Um, there's a nice quality about this, but it feels very sort of forced and unmotivated in terms of where the light source is coming from. So yeah, I'd like you to maybe look at this image and see how you would bring these sort of qualities of the reflection of the water and the sun coming from the horizon into this image. Um, all right, but it's a great start. I really love the colors, and um, there is a kind of a magical quality about this green light, which perhaps you could reconfigure by having it come from underneath here rather than it looks like it's coming from her knee. Um, it looks like it's coming from her knee or something. So, and then it's shining onto him and then her, or maybe it's floating here. Try and make it come from underneath the water. All right. Okay. Thank you. See you next time.